Alright, hey there. So today in our video, what we're going to be looking at is actually just a bunch of quadrilaterals. And I think that most of you might remember from elementary school that quadrilaterals are anything that have four sides. So go ahead and jot that down right here at the top that we're looking at quadrilaterals today. Friendly reminder that the word for our shapes that have lots of sides is polygons. And polygon is hopefully a word you guys learned last school year. It means many sides. You might remember that a triangle has three sides. Today we're exploring the stuff that has four sides, the quadrilaterals. You might remember from last year that the stuff with five sides were pentagons, and then we have hexagons and so on. So again, we're looking today at the stuff that has four sides. This stuff is called the quadrilaterals. Now what I have here are just two random shapes. You can see that there's nothing particular about them, but they do each have four sides. Now what we can do is we can kind of start to organize shapes that have four sides into one of two categories. And it actually has to do with how many sets of parallel sides that they have. So if you have two sets of parallel sides, okay, meaning like here's a set, those are lines that are parallel to each other, and here's another set right there. So for this one, we have two sets or two pairs of parallel lines, and that's what makes this shape called a parallelogram. So you could have four sides, and if you have two sets of parallel lines, you're called a parallelogram. Now you might only have one set of parallel lines. For example, in this trapezoid, those lines are parallel, but these lines are not parallel because if we extend them, they'll eventually crisscross up here. You see that? So those lines aren't parallel, but this trapezoid has one set. And then over here, this trapezoid has a set of parallel lines. So if you only have one pair or one set of parallel sides, you're called a trapezoid. So if you have not yet written the names of those types of shapes up here, we've got that quadrilaterals can be grouped into either parallelograms or trapezoids. Now underneath the types of trapezoids, you could have an isosceles trapezoid, kind of like an isosceles triangle where two of your sides are the exact same. Or you might have something called a right trapezoid where you've got right angles. So yes, there's different types of trapezoids, either the isosceles or the right, okay? Now, once you've got just the one set and we know you're a trapezoid, you're either one of these two types of trapezoid and that's it. But if you're a parallelogram, there can be some more unique features about you. For example, these opposite sides being parallel could also come with right angles. So you could still have your four sides, you could still have the two pairs of parallel sides, but now if you say that shape has four right angles, now it's something called a rectangle. So if you have not yet, please write rectangle above this shape. Now thinking back to a parallelogram, okay, again, to be a parallelogram, all I care about is if you have this set's parallel and this set's parallel. And I could say, all right, I don't care about right angles, but what if I then say all your four sides are the same? You still have this is parallel to this. You still have this is parallel to this. So you still have your two sets of parallel sides. So I could still put that here. We still have two pairs of parallel sides. There were still four sides to begin with, so it's still definitely a quadrilateral. But now if all sides are equal in length, it's something called a rhombus, which I have right here, rhombus. You might also remember that the fancy word for equal when we're dealing with shapes is that they're congruent. So if I say that you have a parallelogram with four congruent sides, you know you're dealing with a rhombus. A parallelogram with four congruent sides is a rhombus. A parallelogram with four right angles is a rectangle. All right, so we've got the rectangle and we've got the rhombus. And now the idea is we could take these two things and combine them and say, I want to keep all my sides the same. And now I want it to have right angles. And that means I've made something called a square. Okay, so a square is a parallelogram. It is also a rectangle. A square is a type of parallelogram. It's also a type of rhombus. So it does have four sides. That makes it a quadrilateral. All sides are equal in length. So I can bring that down here. All sides are equal in length, meaning all sides are congruent. And it still does have four sets or sorry, two sets of the parallel lines. The unique thing that this has that we need to add right here is that it also has the 4 right angles, which we're bringing in from the rectangle. So this needs 4 right angles as well. So if I say, hey, what shape am I? I'm a quadrilateral. All my sides are congruent and I have 4 right angles. If I'm telling you you've got a quadrilateral and all 4 sides are congruent and you have 4 right angles, you know you must be dealing with a square. So if I ask you, are rectangles a type of square? No, they're not. However, squares here are a type of rectangle. I could also say a square is a type of rhombus because remember, to be a rhombus, you just have to have 4 sides that are equal in length. And a square does meet that qualification. But if I say, hey, is a rhombus a type of square? You're like, no, because to be a square, I have to have the right angles, and a rhombus doesn't necessarily have to have that. So when we're answering these true-false questions, y'all, the little trick, the little shortcut I have is to just ask in this picture up here, if it is under the other word, then it's going to be true. If it is not under it, it's going to be false. Okay? So let's look at the first one here. Are all rectangles squares? Is this word below this one? Nope. So false. If it's under it, it's true. Okay? Are all squares rectangles? This shape is under this one, so that's true. All squares are a type of this. All right, are all rhombuses a type of parallelogram? Okay, is this word under this one? It sure is, so true. Are all squares parallelograms? Well, to be a parallelogram, you just have to have 4 sides, and you have to have 2 parallel sets. So that does everything. It's true. And again, the shortcut, you can just say the word square is under parallelogram, so that's true. Now, if I ask, are all parallelograms trapezoids? Definitely not, because they're 2 separate categories to begin with. So there is kind of a flow chart here that I'm going to kind of bold out with big red lines. And let me just actually erase this off to the side. Boop. Here we go. So when we're dealing with quadrilaterals, okay, anything with 4 sides gets broken up into basically one of 2 categories. All right. It just depends on how many sets of parallel lines you have. If you only have the 1 set, you're over here in trapezoids and that's it. Or we could say quadrilaterals with the 2 pairs of parallel sides are called parallelograms. Now, parallelograms are also broken into 2 separate categories. You can say, all right, I'm a parallelogram with 4 right angles, and that makes me a rectangle. Or you can say I'm a parallelogram with just 4 congruent sides, and that makes me a rhombus. Now you could take the idea of the rectangle and the idea of the rhombus and put them together to make the square. And you can say, all right, I've got my opposite sides are parallel. I've got 4 right angles and all 4 sides are congruent. And that is how you make the square. So if it's under the other shape in question, it is a type of it. So that would be a true statement. If it is not under it, it's not a type and it would be a false statement. All right, so let's flip over here and let's practice determining what the shape has to be based on the different qualifications or descriptions, I should say, of the shapes. You might remember up top here, we have the quadrilaterals that we just reviewed. Looks like here we have our parallelogram. This is our rectangle. This is the rhombus. This is the square. This is the isosceles trapezoid, and this is the right trapezoid. All right, so these are all the types. You also might remember that once we said up top, if it's quadrilateral, you're either a parallelogram or a trapezoid. Underneath parallelograms, you can either be a rectangle or a rhombus. And if you put those 2 together, you have this square. So that was kind of like the little flow chart we just reviewed on the previous page, okay? Here's it again, kind of shortened up. All right, sweet. So for the first one, we're just going to figure out what shape it is. So I'm a quadrilateral. 2 of my sides are parallel. Now it doesn't say that I have 2 sets of parallel sides. It just says that 2 of my sides are parallel. So if only 2 of my sides are parallel, it's either going to be this one, because there's 2 sides that are parallel to each other. And these are the 2 sides that are parallel here. Then it goes on to say I have no right angles. So if I have no right angles, that has to be this one right here. It's the isosceles trapezoid. All right, you guys can jot that down there. And again, I'm going to just draw it now based on the specifications. So if two of my sides are parallel and I have no right angles, here's parallel sides. Boop, boop. See how one's a little bit longer than the other? And then you drop this one down here and you drop that down there and you've got your isosceles trapezoid. All right, for the next one, I'm a quadrilateral. I do have 4 right angles and all 4 sides are congruent. So having 4 right angles means you've got to be either this shape or this shape. And then if it takes it a step further to say all 4 sides are congruent, it's got to be this shape right here. So we know we got a square. There's the 4 sides. Here's the 4 right angles. And here are the 4 congruent sides right there. So we are a square here. All right, now we're on the third one. So I am a quadrilateral, obviously. My opposite sides are parallel. So that means opposite here would be parallel and this side opposite is parallel. It could be a parallelogram like this. We don't know yet, but we know we're dealing with a parallelogram. I have no right angles. So if we said it had to be either this or this and it has no right angles, it's got to be the parallelogram. Again, opposite sides are parallel because this set is parallel to this set and this is parallel to this. I have no right angles, so it looks like here we have a parallelogram. All right, go ahead and jot that down. All right, so we use this one. We're good there. All right, I am a quadrilateral. I have 2 sets of parallel sides, so that means it has to be a parallelogram, a type of parallelogram. And I have 4 congruent sides. So I have 2 sets of parallel sides and 4 congruent. I'm the rhombus. It didn't say anything about right angles, so I know I'm not a square. But if it does have congruent sides, it has to be either the rhombus or the square. And it didn't say anything about having 4 right angles, so we know it's not a square. So this one here is the rhombus. All right, and for the last one here, I'm a quadrilateral. 2 of my sides are parallel. So not 2 sets, but just 2 of my sides. And I have 2 right angles. So that's going to be this last one right here. This side is parallel to this side. So there's the 2 sides that are parallel. It's not 2 sets like over here. It's just 2 sides. And it does also have right angles. So this last one is the right trapezoid. Now the only one up here that was not used, if we use the right trapezoid and we covered the rhombus, the only one that we didn't draw from the description is a rectangle. But to draw the rectangle, the description would be I'm a quadrilateral. I have 2 sets of parallel sides because this is a set and this is a set. And then I would say I have 4 right angles. And then you know you've got a rectangle here. All right, so I just walked you guys through the different characteristics of the different shapes and how to kind of think about how to draw them. I also walked you through the true false process and how to think about those. If it's under it, it's true. If it's not, it's false. And again, it's that same thing here. So if I said true or false, all quadrilaterals are trapezoids, you'd be like false. But if I said true or false, all trapezoids are quadrilaterals, well, trapezoids are under quadrilaterals, so now that's true. All right, you got some practice in the packet and then some practice online. That concludes the video. Thank you for watching.